in the heart of New Solsaven, a bustling spaceport that served as a hub for traders, travelers, and wanderers from across the galaxy, Jiho worked tirelessly in his small repair shop. The station was alive with activity ships of all shapes and sizes docked and departed, alien voices echoed through the corridors, and neon lights flickered above crowded market stalls. But none of this excitement reached Jiho's corner of the world. His days were spent fixing engines, welding broken parts, and cleaning up after careless pilots who didn't care about the mess they left behind. Ji-Ho was a young man with simple dreams. He had grown up hearing stories of brave explorers venturing into the unknown reaches of space, discovering new worlds and meeting strange creatures. While others saw repairing ships as just another job, Jiho saw it as a stepping way to learn everything he could about spacecraft so one day, he might build or pilot one himself. For now though, he was stuck in his little workshop, surrounded by grease-stained tools and piles of discarded metal. One ordinary afternoon, as Jiho wiped sweat from his brow and leaned over the engine of a battered freighter, the door to his shop slid open with a soft hiss. He looked up, expecting yet another impatient customer demanding quick repairs. Instead, standing in the doorway was someone unlike anyone he'd ever seen before. She was tall and slender, with shimmering silver hair that cascaded down her back, like liquid moonlight. Her skin glowed faintly, almost translucent, and her eyes, large and almond-shaped, were a deep shade of violet that seemed to pierce right through him. She wore sleek armor that covered most of her body, its surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. "Are you the mechanic?" she asked, her voice smooth and melodic, with only a hint of curiosity. Jiho nodded, trying not to stare too openly. "Yes, I'm Jiho. Can I help you?" The woman stepped further into the shop, her movements graceful and deliberate. "My name is Ara," she said. "I need your assistance. My ship took some damage during an incident. Nothing serious, but I'd prefer not to risk further trouble." Jiho gestured for her to follow him outside, where her ship was parked. It wasn't like any vessel he'd seen before, sleek and angular, with glowing seams that made it look like it belonged to another era entirely. As he inspected the damage, he couldn't help but ask, "What happened? Pirates?" Era gave a slight smirk, as if amused by his guess. "Something like that. Let's just say I crossed paths with people who didn't appreciate my presence." Jiho nodded, already mentally calculating how long the repairs would take. As he worked, Era lingered nearby, watching him with quiet interest. Eventually, she broke the silence. "You seem different from the others here," she remarked. "Different how?" Jiho asked, pausing mid-wrench turn. "You're curious," Ara replied. "Most humans on this station are content staying within their own little bubble. But you look at the stars like you want to reach them." Jiho chuckled nervously. "Guilty as charged. I've always dreamed of leaving this place, seeing what's out there. But for now, I fix ships instead of flying them." Ara tilted her head, studying him thoughtfully. Then, without warning, she turned and walked back toward her ship. A moment later, she returned carrying something heavy in her arms. It was a piece of armor, an ancient-looking chest plate adorned with intricate carvings and faintly glowing runes. The material seemed to shift subtly under the light, as if it were alive. "This belonged to one of my ancestors," Ira explained, holding it out for Jiho to see. "It's been passed down through generations. Back when humanity was still lighting fires with sticks, Kelith warriors wore armor like this to protect their people." Jiho's eyes widened in awe. "That's incredible. How old is it?" "Old enough," Era said with a shrug. "But don't get too not exactly functional anymore. Still, it's a nice conversation starter." She paused, then added teasingly, "Want to try it on? See if you can even lift it." Jiho hesitated. "Isn't it sacred or something? I mean, it's your ancestor's armor." Era laughed, a sound that was both musical and slightly mocking. "Sacred? Hardly. Besides, it's just a joke. Go ahead, it'll be funny." Feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity, Jiho set down his tools and approached Era. He reached out tentatively, half expecting the armor to crumble into dust at his touch. But when his fingers brushed against its surface, he felt an unexpected warmth, as if the metal recognized him. Encouraged, he slipped it over his shoulders. At first, nothing happened. Jiho glanced at Era, who was watching him with raised eyebrows. "Told you it wouldn't." Her words cut off abruptly as the armor began to glow. Faint lines of light spread across its surface, forming complex patterns that pulsed in rhythm with Jiho's heartbeat. The air around him crackled with energy, and he felt a surge of power coursing through his veins. His senses sharpened. He could hear every distant hum of machinery, feel the vibrations of footsteps in the corridor outside, and even detect subtle changes in temperature. Ara stared at him, her expression shifting from amusement to shock. "This shouldn't be possible," she murmured. "Humans aren't supposed to be able to interface with Kelith technology." Jiho looked down at himself, equally stunned. "What's happening to me?" Before Era could answer, the glow intensified, and Jiho felt a sudden rush of strength. Without thinking, he lifted a nearby toolbox, one that usually required two hands, and held it effortlessly in one. "Whoa," he breathed. "Is this normal?" "No," Era said sharply, her tone suddenly serious. This has never happened before, not with anyone. Something about you triggered the armor. Jiho lowered the toolbox, feeling a mixture of excitement and unease. Does this mean I can keep it? Ara snorted. Hardly. This armor is priceless. But, she trailed off, her gaze thoughtful. Maybe there's more to you than meets the eye, Jiho, and maybe, just maybe, this wasn't an accident. As the two of them stood there, surrounded by the hum of the spaceport and the distant roar of departing ships, neither of them realized that this moment would change their lives forever. For Jiho, it was the beginning of a journey he'd only dreamed of, but one that would test him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. And for Ari, it was the start of a mystery that would challenge everything she thought she knew about her people, her heritage, and herself. The glow from the ancient armor faded slowly, leaving Jiho standing in the middle of the workshop with a mix of awe and confusion written all over his face. Ara, still trying to process what she had just witnessed, took a cautious step back. Her violet eyes darted between Jiho and the armor, searching for answers that weren't coming easily. What was that? Jiho asked finally, his voice trembling slightly. The surge of energy he'd felt moments ago was fading, but its effects lingered in his body. He could still sense the armor's presence, as if it were alive and connected to him. Somehow, I don't know, Ara admitted, her usual calm demeanor replaced by uncertainty. She crossed her arms tightly, as though trying to shield herself from the enormity of what had happened. This shouldn't be possible. No human has ever been able to activate Calith technology before, let alone something as old and powerful as this. Jiho frowned, glancing down at the armor. It no longer glowed, but the intricate carvings etched into its surface seemed sharper now, more defined. Each line pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly, as if breathing in sync with his heartbeat. It feels strange, he said after a moment. Like it knows me. Ara raised an eyebrow. Knows you. Don't get too poetic about it. This is serious. She paused, then added, Do you feel any different? Stronger? Faster? Jiho hesitated. He flexed his fingers experimentally, feeling the same muscles and bones he'd always had, but there was something else beneath the surface. A subtle hum of energy coursed through him, making him feel lighter, quicker. Without thinking, he reached out and grabbed a heavy wrench lying on the workbench. To his surprise, it felt lighter than usual, as though he could throw it across the room without breaking a sweat. Yeah, he said slowly, setting the wrench back down. I think I do. Ara watched him carefully, her expression unreadable. Then, after a long silence, she sighed. We need to figure out why this happened. There's no logical explanation for it. Humans aren't compatible with our tech. One of the reasons we've never shared it with your kind. Maybe I'm special, Jiho joked weakly, though the weight of the situation was starting to sink in. Ara didn't laugh. Instead, she turned toward the door, motioning for him to follow. Come with me. We can't stay here. If anyone finds out about this, it'll cause problems. Jiho hesitated. Leaving the safety of his workshop felt like stepping into uncharted territory literally, but curiosity got the better of him. What if this armor really did hold some kind of secret? What if it was meant for him to discover? With a deep breath, he nodded and followed Ara outside. They walked through the crowded corridors of New 7, weaving past merchants, hawking exotic goods, travelers dragging luggage, and aliens of every shape and size. Ara moved quickly, her silver hair catching the light as she navigated the chaos with practiced ease. Jiho struggled to keep up, his mind racing with questions. So, he began cautiously. What exactly are we looking for? A place where we won't be disturbed, Ara replied without slowing down. Somewhere secure. I need to run some tests to see how much of the armor's systems have activated. Jiho swallowed hard. Tests sounded intimidating, especially when they involved alien technology far beyond anything he understood. But he trusted Ara at least. He wanted to believe she wasn't going to hurt him. After all, she'd brought him along instead of taking the armor back immediately. Eventually, they arrived at a secluded corner of the spaceport, a quiet storage bay filled with crates and discarded equipment. Ara scanned the area briefly, ensuring they were alone, then gestured for Jiho to sit on one of the crates. She pulled out a small device from a pouch on her belt and held it up to the armor. The device emitted a soft blue light, scanning the surface of the chest plate. This will tell us how much of the armor's functionality has awakened, Ara explained. If it's fully operational, it could mean, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. As the scanner worked, Jiho couldn't help but ask, why does this armor exist in the first place? What's so special about it? Ara hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. For the first time since meeting her, Jiho saw a flicker of sadness in her expression. It belonged to one of the greatest warriors of my people, she said quietly. Her name was Lysara. She fought against an enemy known as the Vorthika race of beings who sought to conquer and destroy everything in their path. Lysara disappeared centuries ago during the final battle, and the armor was thought to be lost until it resurfaced among my family's relics. Jiho listened intently, captivated by the story. What happened to the Vorthok? No one knows for sure, Ara admitted. Some say they were defeated, others believe they retreated, waiting for the right moment to return. Either way, they haven't been seen in generations. Before Jiho could respond, the scanner beeped loudly, interrupting their conversation. Era glanced at the readings, her eyes widening in disbelief. Impossible, she whispered. What is it? Jiho asked, leaning forward anxiously. The armor's core systems are active, Era said, her voice tinged with both wonder and concern. Not just partially fully, it's responding to you as if you're its rightful owner. Jiho blinked, stunned. But I'm not, I'm just me. That's the problem, Ara muttered. You shouldn't be able to use it at all. This goes against everything I've ever learned about Kelith technology. Suddenly, the storage bay door slid open with a loud hiss. Both Jiho and Ara turned sharply, bracing themselves for trouble. Standing in the doorway was a group of aliens, 3 burly creatures with rough, scaly skin and glowing red eyes. They wore mismatched armor, and carried weapons that looked cobbled together from spare parts. Well, one of them growled, baring sharp teeth. Looks like we found ourselves something valuable. Era stepped protectively in front of Jiho, her hand hovering near a weapon holstered at her side. Stay back, she warned. You don't want to mess with us. The leader of the group chuckled darkly. Oh, I think we do. Word travels fast around here. A human wearing Kelith armor. That's worth a fortune or a fight. Jiho's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. These scavengers weren't just passing threats, they were dangerous. And they clearly knew about the armor. He glanced at Ara, who seemed ready to defend them. But even she couldn't take on 3 armed opponents alone. Listen, Jiho said quickly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. There's been a misunderstanding. This armor doesn't belong to Emma, it's hers. He pointed at Era, hoping to deflect their attention. The leader sneered. Doesn't matter who it belongs to. It's ours now. Before anyone could react, one of the scavengers lunged forward, grabbing Jiho by the arm. Instinctively, Jiho twisted away, feeling a burst of strength he hadn't known he possessed. His movements were faster, more precise than usual, and he managed to break free with surprising ease. The scavenger stumbled backward, momentarily stunned. What the leader started, but Era didn't give him a chance to finish. In one fluid motion, she drew her weapon and fired a bolt of energy at the nearest attacker, sending him sprawling to the ground. Chaos erupted as the remaining scavengers opened fire. Energy blasts ricocheted off the walls, filling the air with smoke and sparks. Jiho ducked behind a crate, his mind spinning. He had no idea how to fight, but the armor seemed to guide him instinctively. When another scavenger charged at him, he sidestepped effortlessly, delivering a punch that sent the creature crashing into a stack of crates. Era handled the rest with brutal efficiency, her movements sharp and calculated. Within moments, the attackers lay unconscious or injured, groaning in pain. The leader, realizing he was outnumbered, backed away slowly before turning and fleeing into the corridor. When the dust settled, Era holstered her weapon and turned to Jiho, her expression a mixture of relief and disbelief. You handled yourself well, she said, her tone measured. Better than most humans would have. Jiho shook his head, still processing what had just happened. I didn't do anything special. It was the armor, it made me stronger, faster. Ara nodded grimly. That's exactly what worries me. Whoever those scavengers were, they'll spread the word about what happened here. People will come looking for you and the armor. We need to leave now. Jiho didn't argue. For the second time that day, he found himself following Ara into the unknown. Unsure of where they were headed, but certain of one thing. His life would never be the same again. Jiho and Ara didn't stop running until they reached the farthest edge of New Celestivan, where the spaceport gave way to a desolate expanse of abandoned docking bays and crumbling structures. The air here was colder, quieter, almost as if the galaxy itself had forgotten this place existed. Era led Jiho through narrow corridors littered with debris, her steps quick and purposeful. She knew exactly where she was going. This way, she said over her shoulder, glancing back briefly to make sure he was keeping up. We can't stay on the station any longer. Too many eyes, too many questions. Jiho nodded, though his mind was racing. Everything felt surreal, the glowing armor clinging to his chest, the strange energy coursing through him, the knowledge that dangerous scavengers were now hunting them. He wanted to ask Era more about what was happening, but he could tell from her tense posture and sharp movements that now wasn't the time for questions. Finally, they arrived at an old transport shuttle half buried in rubble. Era tapped a sequence into a control panel near the hatch, and with a groan of protesting metal, the door slid open. Inside, the interior was dimly lit and sparsely furnished, just enough room for 2 seats and a small storage compartment. Era gestured for Jiho to climb aboard, then sealed the hatch behind them. Where are we going? Jiho asked, as the shuttle hummed to life. A Kelith outpost, Era replied, her hands moving deftly over the controls. It's hidden deep within an asteroid belt, not easy to find, unless you know where to look. We'll be safe there. For now. Jiho leaned back in his seat, trying to process everything. Safe sounded good, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was only beginning. As the shuttle lifted off and shot out of the spaceport, he stared out the window at the stars streaking past. For the first time in his life, he was leaving New Solsavan, and, not just physically. His entire world had shifted in ways he couldn't fully comprehend yet. Hours later, the shuttle approached its destination, a massive asteroid floating silently in the void of space. Its surface was jagged and pockmarked, scarred by centuries of collisions and cosmic wear. But beneath the rough exterior lay the remnants of a once great civilization, a sprawling complex of tunnels and chambers. Carved directly into the rock. Air guided the shuttle into a concealed hangar bay and powered down the engines. "Welcome to Outpost Kellyan," she said as they disembarked. "It's been abandoned for decades, but some of the systems still work." The air inside the outpost was cool and stale, carrying the faint metallic temps of long-unused machinery. Dust coated every surface, and shadows danced across the walls as Ara activated the emergency lighting. Jiho followed her deeper into the labyrinthine structure, marveling at the alien architecture. The walls were smooth and seamless, etched with glowing patterns similar to those on the armor. It was beautiful in a haunting, otherworldly way. "This place is incredible," Jiho murmured, running his fingers along one of the carvings. "It used to serve as a training ground for warriors," Era explained, "before we left it behind." "Why did you leave?" Era hesitated, her expression darkening. "Because we thought we'd won. After the Vorthok disappeared, we believed the war was over. So we dismantled our strongholds, buried our weapons, and moved on. But now," she trailed off, shaking her head, "now I'm not so sure." Jiho didn't press her further. Instead, he focused on the task at hand. Era had brought him here for a reason: to understand the armor and unlock its secrets. That much was clear. They reached a large chamber at the heart of the outpost. The room was circular, with high ceilings and a raised platform in the center. Symbols glowed faintly on the floor, forming concentric rings around the platform. Ara stepped onto the platform and turned to face Jiho. "Is a trial chamber," she said. "It was designed to test the strength, skill, and resolve of those who wore the armor. If you're truly connected to it, you'll need to prove yourself worthy." Jiho swallowed hard. "Prove myself?" How? Era crossed her arms. "By facing challenges that push you to your limits? Physical tests, mental puzzles, even emotional trials. The armor responds to inner strength as much as physical power. Are you ready?" Jiho hesitated. The idea of stepping into some kind of alien gauntlet made his stomach churn, but he knew there was no turning back now. "I guess I don't have a choice." Ara nodded approvingly. "Good, follow me." She activated the chamber, and the glowing symbols on the floor flared to life, casting the room in an eerie blue light. A holographic projection appeared above the platform, showing a figure clad in the same armor Jiho now wore. The figure moved gracefully, demonstrating combat techniques and defensive maneuvers. "The first challenge will test your physical abilities," Ara explained. "You'll need to fight a simulated opponent. Don't worry it's not real, but it will. Respond as if it is. Use the skills the armor gives you." Jiho nodded nervously and stepped onto the platform. As soon as he did, the hologram sprang to life, charging toward him with startling speed. Instinctively, Jiho raised his arms to block the attack, and, to his surprise, the armor responded. A shimmering barrier formed around him, deflecting the blow. Encouraged, he countered with a punch, feeling the armor amplify his strength. The hologram staggered but recovered quickly, launching another assault. For several minutes, Jiho fought desperately, learning as he went. The armor seemed to guide his movements, enhancing his reflexes and teaching him how to anticipate his opponent's attacks. By the time the simulation ended, he was breathing heavily but exhilarated. "Well done," Ara said, a hint of pride in her voice. But that was only the beginning. Over the next few hours, Jiho faced increasingly difficult challenges. One trial required him to solve a complex puzzle using clues embedded in the chamber's walls. Another forced him to confront illusions of his deepest fears: failure, loneliness, the loss of loved ones. Each test pushed him harder, forcing him to dig deep within himself for answers. Through it all, the armor remained a constant presence, responding to his emotions and thoughts. When he doubted himself, it grew heavier, grounding him. When he found courage, it surged with energy, propelling him forward. Slowly, Jiho began to realize that the armor wasn't just a tool, it was a partner, amplifying his strengths and helping him overcome his weaknesses. By the time the final trial ended, Jiho collapsed onto the platform, utterly exhausted but triumphant. Ara approached him, her expression unreadable. "You've done well," she said softly. "Better than I expected." Jiho looked up at her, still catching his breath. "Does this mean I pass?" Ara nodded. "Yes. But passing the trials is only part of the equation. The armor has chosen you for a reason. Jiho, you carry something inside, you something rare and powerful, something my people may have lost long ago." "What do you mean?" Jiho asked, confused. Before Era could answer, the chamber's lights flickered, and a low rumble echoed through the outpost. Both of them froze, listening intently. "What was that?" Jiho whispered. Era's eyes narrowed. "Trouble." Without another word, she grabbed Jiho's arm and pulled him toward the exit. Whatever peace they'd found in the outpost was about to be shattered. The rumble grew louder as Jiho and Ara raced through the twisting corridors of Outpost Kellyan. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the walls trembled with each passing second. Whatever was causing the disturbance wasn't natural, it felt deliberate, mechanical. Ara's pace quickened, her violet eyes darting around corners as she tried to pinpoint the source of the commotion. "We're not alone," she muttered under her breath, gripping the weapon at her side. Jiho followed closely behind, his heart pounding. The armor still clung to his chest, its faint glow pulsing in rhythm with his anxiety. He wanted to ask what was happening, but the urgency in Ara's movements told him there was no time for explanations. They needed to move on fast. As they rounded a corner, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the corridor. Jiho froze, his eyes widening as three figures emerged from the shadows. They weren't scavengers this time, they were mercenaries, clad in sleek black suits that shimmered like oil under the dim lights. Their leader, a tall humanoid with sharp features and cold, calculating eyes, stepped forward. "Well, well," he said, his voice smooth but menacing. "Looks like we found our prize." Ara stepped in front of Jiho protectively, her hand tightening on her weapon. "Rinnock," she spat, her tone dripping with venom. "I should have known you'd be behind this." The mercenary leader smirked. "You always did underestimate me, Ara. Did you really think you could hide here forever?" "What do you want?" Ara demanded, her voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. Rinnock's gaze shifted to Jiho, lingering on the glowing armor. "What I've always wanted, the secrets of your people, and it seems this human has stumbled upon something far more valuable than either of us anticipated." His smile widened, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Hand over the armor, and maybe I'll let you live." Jiho felt a chill run down his spine. These weren't ordinary criminals, they were professionals, armed and dangerous. Even with Ari's skills, they were outnumbered and outgunned. But before he could say anything, Ara spoke up. "You'll never get your hands on it," she snapped, raising her weapon. "If you want it, you'll have to kill me first." Rinnock chuckled darkly. "That can be arranged." Before anyone could react, the mercenaries opened fire. Energy bolts streaked through the air, forcing Jiho and Ara to dive for cover behind a crumbling wall. The impact of the blast sent chunks of debris flying, filling the corridor with smoke and dust. "This is bad," Jiho whispered, clutching the armor tightly. "We can't fight them all." Ara glanced at him, her expression grim. "Just stay close, we'll find a way out." But even as she spoke, Jiho noticed something strange. The armor was reacting again, its glow intensifying, spreading across his body like liquid light. He felt a surge of energy coursing through him, stronger than before. It wasn't just physical strength this time. It was something deeper, almost instinctual. The armor seemed to be guiding him, urging him to act. "Trust me," Jiho said suddenly, surprising even himself. "I think I can help." Ara hesitated, her eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know how to explain it," Jiho admitted, "but the armor, it's showing me things, like it knows what to do." Before Ara could respond, one of the mercenaries lunged toward them, brandishing a blade. Without thinking, Jiho stepped forward, letting the armor take control. His movements were fluid and precise, almost effortless. He sidestepped the attack and delivered a punch that sent the mercenary crashing into the wall. The others hesitated, momentarily stunned by his sudden display of power. Ara stared at him, her expression a mix of awe and disbelief. "How are you doing that?" "I told you I don't know," Jiho replied, dodging another blast. "But it's working." Despite his newfound abilities, the odds were still against them. Rinnock signaled his team to regroup, and within moments, they had Jiho and Ara surrounded. Trapped, with no clear escape route, Jiho braced himself for the worst. And then, without warning, Ara turned to him. Her violet eyes locked onto his, filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Before Jiho could ask what she meant, she pressed a small device on her wrist. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and the armor abruptly shut down. The glow faded, leaving Jiho feeling suddenly weak and vulnerable. He staggered, disoriented, as the energy that had been fueling him vanished. "Ara, what did you do?" he shouted, panic rising in his voice. "It's a failsafe," she explained quickly, her tone apologetic but firm. "Every piece of Keleth technology has one. I disabled the armor to keep you safe." "Safe?" Jiho exclaimed, incredulous. "Now we're defenseless." "No, we're defenseless. Now you're defenseless. Which means they won't see you as a threat anymore." Before Jiho could argue further, Rinnock and his team, closed in. Ara raised her hands in surrender, stepping away from Jiho. "Take me," she said loudly. "Leave him alone. He's just a human, he doesn't matter." Jiho's stomach sank. He wanted to protest, to fight back, but without the armor he was powerless. The mercenaries grabbed Ara roughly, binding her wrists with glowing cuffs. Rinnock turned his attention to Jiho, studying him with a predatory grin. "As much as I'd love to teach you a lesson, kid," he sneered, "you're not worth my time. Stay out of our way, or next time, I won't be so generous." With that, the mercenaries dragged Ara away, disappearing into the depths of the outpost. Jiho stood frozen, watching them go. Anger and frustration boiled inside him, but he knew there was nothing he could do. Not now, not without the armor. Hours passed, and the outpost grew eerily silent. Jiho wandered aimlessly through the corridors, replaying the events in his mind. Era's betrayal stung more than he cared to admit. She had saved him, yes, but at what cost? Now she was captured, and he was stranded, alone and powerless. But as he walked, something caught his eye, faint glimmer of light emanating from one of the chambers. Curious, he followed it, finding himself back in the trial room where he'd faced the challengers earlier. The symbols on the floor were glowing again, brighter than before. In the center of the platform stood the armor, restored to its full brilliance. Jiho approached cautiously, half expecting it to reject him after what had happened. But when he touched it, the familiar warmth returned, flooding his body with energy. The armor hadn't abandoned him, it had simply waited for him to reclaim it. As he donned it once more, memories began to surface, not his own, but fragments of the past stored within the armor. He saw visions of Lysera, the legendary warrior who had once worn it. She fought bravely against the Vorthok, wielding the armor's power with unmatched skill. But there was also sadness in her story, a sense of loss and sacrifice that resonated deeply with Jiho. He realized then that the armor wasn't just a tool, it was a legacy. And if he wanted to save Ara and uncover the truth about the Vorthok, he would need to embrace that legacy fully. With renewed determination, Jiho set off to track down Rinok and his team. Using the armor's enhanced senses, he followed their trail through the outpost, navigating collapsed tunnels and hidden passages until he reached their makeshift base. There, he found Era bound and restrained, guarded by 2 mercenaries. Steeling himself, Jiho stepped into view. "Let her go," he commanded, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. The guards laughed, drawing their weapons. "Look, who decided to show up?" one of them taunted. "Didn't we tell you to stay out of this?" Jiho didn't respond. Instead, he charged forward, letting the armor guide his every move. The fight was swift and decisive. Within moments, both guards lay unconscious, and Jiho knelt beside Ara, freeing her from her restraints. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ara broke the silence. "Why did you come back for me?" Jiho met her gaze, his expression resolute. "Because we're in this together. Whether you trust me or not, I trust you. And I need your help to figure out why the armor chose me." Era looked at him, her violet eyes softening. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I shouldn't have doubted you." Jiho nodded, accepting her apology. Together, they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united by shared purpose and the weight of the armor's legacy. And Era moved quickly through the outpost, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The mercenaries were scattered now, their numbers reduced after Jiho's surprise attack. But Rinok was still out there somewhere, and both of them knew he wouldn't give up easily. He was cunning, ruthless, and driven by greed. Dangerous combination. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Era glanced at Jiho, her violet eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and guilt. She had betrayed him once, disabling the armor to protect him, but instead of abandoning her, he had come back. Worse still, he had risked his life to save hers. It wasn't something she could easily forget or forgive herself for. "You didn't have to do that," Era said finally, breaking the tense silence between them. "You could have left me behind." Jiho shook his head, his focus remaining on the path ahead. "I couldn't, not after everything we've been through. Besides, you saved me first, remember?" Era sighed, her voice softening. "That doesn't make it right. I doubted you when you needed me most. And now you're here," Jiho replied simply. "That's what matters." The exchange was brief, but it carried weight. For the first time since they'd met, Ara felt a genuine connection with Jiho, not just as an ally, but as someone who understood her struggles and trusted her despite her flaws. It was a bond neither of them had expected, yet one that was growing stronger with each passing moment. They soon reached the heart of the outpost, where Rinok had set up his command center. The room was large and dimly lit, dominated by a massive console covered in blinking lights and alien symbols. Rinok stood near the far wall, examining a holographic projection of the armor schematics. His expression was one of pure obsession, his sharp features illuminated by the eerie glow of the display. "So," Rinok said without turning around, sensing their presence, "the human decided to grow a backbone after all." Jiho stepped forward, the armor glowing faintly as he approached. "It's over, Rinok. Let us go, and maybe we'll let you live." Rinok laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Brave words. For someone who doesn't even belong in that armor. "Tell me, boy, do you really think you can stop me?" Instead of answering, Jiho activated the armor's systems, letting its energy surge outward. The air crackled with power, and the symbols etched into the metal began to pulse rhythmically. Rinok's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "Impressive," he admitted reluctantly, "but brute force won't be enough." With a wave of his hand, Rinok triggered a series of traps hidden throughout the room. Panels slid open in the floor, revealing sharp spikes below. Energy barriers sprang up, cutting off escape routes, and from the shadows emerged more mercenaries. Their weapons trained on Jiho and Ara. Jiho clenched his fists, feeling the armor respond to his determination. "We don't have to fight," he said, addressing the mercenaries. "This isn't your battle." One of them hesitated, glancing at Rinok, but the leader's glare silenced any doubts. Enough talk, Renak snapped. Kill them. Chaos erupted as the mercenaries opened fire. Jiho moved instinctively, guided by the armor's enhancements. He dodged blasts of energy, deflecting them with a shimmering barrier that formed around him. When one of the mercenaries lunged at him with a blade, Jiho countered with a swift kick, sending the attacker sprawling into a nearby console. Era fought alongside him, her movements precise and deadly. She used her weapon to disable several opponents, creating openings for Jiho to exploit. Together, they worked seamlessly, their teamwork born not just from necessity, but from trust. Despite their efforts, however, Renek remained a step ahead. Using the outpost's systems, he unleashed wave after wave of automated defenses, drones, armed with plasma cannons, turrets mounted on the walls, and even gravity distortions that made movement difficult. Jiho and Ara found themselves pushed to their limits, struggling to hold their ground against overwhelming odds. Finally, Jiho realized they couldn't win this fight through sheer force alone. He turned to Ara, shouting over the din of battle. There has to be a way to shut this down. Can you access the main controls? Ara nodded, already scanning the room for an entry point. Spotting a terminal near the center, she darted toward it, weaving through the chaos with practiced agility. Jiho covered her, using the armor to create a protective barrier that absorbed incoming attacks. Sparks flew as energy bolts struck the shield, but it held firm. Reaching the terminal, Era began typing furiously, her fingers flying across the interface. Lines of alien code scrolled across the screen as she worked to override Renek's commands. Behind her, Jiho continued to fend off attackers, his strength waning with each passing second. The armor's power was immense, but even it had its limits, and Jiho wasn't sure how much longer he could keep going. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared throughout the chamber. The drones froze mid-flight, their systems shutting down. The turrets powered off, their barrels lowering silently. Even the gravity distortions dissipated, allowing Jiho and Ara to move freely once more. What did you do? Jiho asked, panting heavily. I locked him out, Era replied, a triumphant gleam in her eye. Now it's our turn. Seizing the opportunity, Jiho charged at Renak, who had retreated to a raised platform overlooking the room. The mercenary leader tried to activate a final failsafe, but Era intercepted the signal, rendering his controls useless. Cornered and desperate, Renak drew a sleek blade and prepared to fight. The duel was fierce and fast-paced. Renak was skilled, his movements calculated and precise, but Jiho, empowered by the armor and fueled by resolve, matched him blow for blow. Each strike sent shockwaves rippling through the air, shaking the very foundations of the outpost. Finally, with a well maneuver, Jiho disarmed Renak, sending the blade clattering to the ground. He pinned the mercenary leader against the wall, the armor's energy humming ominously. It's over, Jiho said firmly. Leave, and never come back. For a moment, Renak looked like he might resist, but then, seeing no other option, he nodded grudgingly. You win this time, human. But mark my words, the galaxy will hear about this. With that, Renak fled, disappearing into the shadows. The remaining mercenaries followed suit, retreating before Jiho or Era could stop them. When the dust settled, Jiho and Era stood amidst the wreckage of the outpost, catching their breath. The battle was won, but the war, the larger conflict, hinted at by the armor's secrets, was far from over. What happens now? Jiho asked, his voice tinged with exhaustion. Era placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression thoughtful. Now, we prepare. The Vorthok are coming, that much is clear. The armor chose you because it senses something in you. Something my people lost long ago. Hope, Jiho suggested, half-joking. Era smiled faintly. Maybe, or maybe it's something simpler. Faith. Faith in yourself, in others, in the idea that even the smallest actions can change the course of history. Jiho looked down at the armor, its glow steady and reassuring. Then I guess we'd better get ready. Together, they left the outpost, stepping out into the vastness of space. Ahead of them lay countless challenges, dangers, and mysteries. But for the first time, Jiho felt truly alive, not just as a mechanic dreaming of adventure, but as a warrior ready to face whatever came next. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Jiho and Ara embarked on a journey that would test their courage, forge unbreakable bonds, and ultimately shape the fate of the galaxy. Whatever awaited them, they would face it side by side, united by purpose and destiny.